Thanks for inviting me here, and I think November is a good month for lectures, because what else can you do in November, you know? So let's have some lectures. I think that's good for, you cannot go outside, it's not much to see. So good, hopefully I can entertain you a bit this afternoon. I thought to have a bit of a theme dealing with the work that we do. And I thought it would be nice to show some more, a combination of projects that deal with the existing. Of course, you always have to do with an existing, but more dealing with let's say, a transformation or a conversion aspect to it. So this is a kind of a general theme. Matteo already said we have made projects on different locations, and we even did a kind of a mini project in Milan quite some time ago, and it doesn't exist anymore. But it still it gives a certain smile when I look at it, because it has a sort of sympathetic feeling to me. Because we made a small pavilion out of boxes of compressed clothing, recycled clothing that will be going somewhere in the world. But then, of course, in the combination of Milan, where design, fashion, and architecture meet, we thought it would be nice to build something out of let's say, old-fashioned stuff, so to say. And it deals, of course, as well with the theme of recycling. It's not only recycling a building, but it can also be that you recycle a material. And you see a lot of new developments in that by looking at how you can deal with waste, not only the material itself, but also when you take out a building into pieces, how you can maybe put pieces together again in a different way. The timing of the lecture, I think, is also nice, because tomorrow this little booklet appears at the Corriere della Sera, in a series of the Politecnico Abitare are part of it as well. And so there's always a bit of certain good vibe when we come to Italy. There's always a lot of people, and there's a lot of interest in the media. So we immediately said yes when they asked, hey, can we do a quick little mini monograph of your latest, not only the latest works. So it's a whole nice, fresh collection that has really old stuff inside it, but also very new stuff. So it's a little advertisement here for this little funny booklet. I just arrived in the office and we all looked at it, so I couldn't read it, but the pictures are nice. Talking about books, it's a little bit of an introduction, because this was more or less our first book, and it deals with the issue of density, and density, of course, also very much related to, let's say, the city, and the fact that this is more or less the focus point of attention for architecture these days. So we come from a country that is not that far from here, but it is a country that is never really full, and but it's also never really empty. There's not really big cities, and there's also no emptiness, and this kind of had a big impact on the fact that you grow up there, and that when you want to escape, let's say, the city or the place you live to a place which is completely different. That is really difficult for Dutch people. So you have to go to Belgium or so, and to Germany to get some real nature or some mountains and some space. And this, I think, was a kind of obsession for us in the first years of our practice, where we say, hey, how can we optimize the use of space in such a way that we can create, in a way, more contrast between emptiness and fullness. And a little bit of this is really old slides, as you can see, like old computer graphics with a low resolution. But this is a map of Europe, and you see the density map of Holland there as a kind of plateau. And if you come to Holland, you only see low rise. Yeah? So, but there's a lot of it, and and all these little cities are coming together. So, our first statement in a kind of built format, in a way, statement as a building, was the Dutch Pavilion in Hanover, where we took this element of densification and a kind of future dream into reality. For only a short period, we stacked landscapes on top of each other, turned it into a pavilion, and with an emptiness around it. So in a way, the dream for the future of how we could see it, not only in Holland, but also in other places, because you see urbanizations everywhere, and this is, of course, you cannot do something about it. That's there. It's an enormous force, but you can at least try to do it in a certain way that things become a bit better. I think that's you could say is the aim that we strive as an architect. It's not a big like we change the world, but it's at least somehow you do things in a way that at least you try to do them as good as possible, that the situation or the general atmosphere in the city, the place you work, improves. And recently I found this slide, and I think it was a really nice diagram. And the title was "The Journey to the Good Density," because density itself is a number, and that you could say, yeah, it doesn't really say so much, but you could try to find the best density in the best combination of elements. And you see certain elements that you have repetition and these kind of things. You can do things in a different way, with the same amount of material and the same amount of stuff, but by combining things in a different way, it's completely different, and people are more, let's say, pleased with it. So it's sort of a little, not really a wake-up call, but more a reminder, like, hey, this is more or less what it's about. Try to find the best solution in the conditions that you have to work in. And so from densification, I was thought about thinking to speak about re-densification, to try to, hey, you always work in an existing context, at least in many more and more cases. So as a focus point especially for your generation, this is a topic that you should think about, so that you can say that there's always new commissions at the moment that deal with a transformation of a certain area, or you see that an existing area needs a mix of functions, or this is kind of a section of a potential city with all kind of forces that are there. And this is this kind of the power, the field of power that we have to work in as architecture. And in a way, you could say that it's a combination of investment and big forces in a way. But still, as an architect, you could play a role and sometimes make a difference. And I'd like to show you a few examples. The first one is not from our own office, but it's a project that I really like, as it was invented by an architect from Amsterdam, and she was riding a bicycle in the harbor, seeing this old crane track. It was abandoned, and this was still empty land, more or less. Now it's full of new offices and stuff, but she spotted it and designed a project on top of it, and found somebody else to pay for it. And now it's there, and it's really cool office building in the middle of the harbor. And then other people came over and say, hey, I'd like to sit next to this office building, and the whole development started just anyway because of the architect taking a bicycle ride on a Sunday afternoon, say, hey, this is a cool site. Of course, it doesn't always work like that. But it would be fantastic if this would happen, and every time you see something, you can get a project out of it. But it deals with the fact that we have to deal with existing stuff, and instead of making more and more new, you know that we have a scarcity of space, a scarcity of material, and more people living in the city, and that means that you have to deal with that. And in the Dutch context, it meant that there was a large amount of empty spaces, strangely enough, buildings that were not exactly good because people didn't like to live there, or like to work there, or they were on the wrong location, or they were not designed in a good way. And this was shown at the Biennale in Venice a couple of years ago. And shortly after, there was indeed a transformation boom going on in cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam. And I'll show you a couple of examples of this, because this is a typical example from a 60s office building. This is from the newspaper, the Volkskrant, quite a well-known newspaper. The building was considered ugly by the city people living in Amsterdam. Nobody really liked it, but it was there. But suddenly the building was empty, the newspaper moved out, and other people moved in, and because it was cheap and it was temporary, and suddenly the building, from a kind of ugliness, started to appear on the social media as a cool place. And then I was like realizing, hey, what is the difference then? The building is the same. The only thing that changed the activities inside it and architecture itself. Yeah, it's interesting to realize that any building can become beautiful again without a transformation. So that the design of the building is relatively unimportant, you could say. And you have a similar building in Rotterdam. This is the building that's actually quite well known. It's the Schieblock, and it's a totally boring building on a good location. And now it is a hip meeting spot with different young firms. There's all kinds of activities taking place. And from this building, the rest of the city is becoming more or less conquered by a new bridge designed by a young officer from Rotterdam, Zus Architects. And they made a kind of crowdfunding bridge sprouting from their office into this neighborhood and developing in a way indirectly the whole place. So this was an interesting moment to see that you can actually, even as a small office, have with good ideas that you can really do something, and it had helped to give a kind of energy in the city that wasn't really visible, so to say. Our own office is not far from here. It's also in an existing building. We moved about 3-4 months ago into this. It's a kind of a combination of it used to be an office that was built after the war, when Rotterdam was empty and there was a lot of damage. There were not enough office spaces, and they made this kind of a hotel for offices, and this was the workspace for this collective office building. And we turned it into a family house, a family office, with different meeting places. This, together with the team, we asked around, hey guys, what do we do for ourselves when we have to design our own house? What is it going to be like? This is not easy because you have a very critical staff. So the team that was working on it, they were a bit nervous to say, hey guys, yeah. So they wanted to be sure that it was exactly as it's supposed to be. So we were our own client in that respect, and we said, okay, the most important element is that we have good spaces to meet, to talk, because this we lack. And we made 3 sort of houses, so to say, in these halls. We have 5 halls, and in these houses, they're all kind of theme rooms. There are big meeting rooms, but there's also a game room, there's a drawing room, there's a model room, and there's more of that. So there's like about 15 rooms. Each of them has an own let's say, atmosphere and character, and depending on the situation, you take the room you like. And between these rooms and the rest of the workspaces, we have a big street with our lunch table, and then here there's a green chandelier with a reception below, and then all the workspaces are behind the glass wall, which is sort of silent studio, you could say. It has a different atmosphere. So here you have noise of the street, there you have the meeting spaces, and here there's a sort of concentration atmosphere. And it works, it gives a sort of new energy to to the teams and to the staff. And hopefully you can see that in the work of the office. At least, we are now almost 25 years practicing, and I've just spoken about it during lunch. We need some kind of a new move, so to say, after sitting in a certain atmosphere. It's nice to step out and to create your own office. Our office is very close to the market hall. After this building was finished, we really had a kind of boost of activity, not only in Holland, but also certainly people discovered us. Before we were considered more or less a kind of a boutique office, but after this building, we were sort of we reached a kind of next level. The more commercial clients came to our door, which is an interesting situation, because how to do the same thing over again or not. And so this is what we are working on at the moment. So maybe in 5 years you have to ask me back, and I can show you what happened afterwards. But Rotterdam is a place that is it's not a typical Dutch city. It's in a way a more modern city. It's almost like there's a lot of towers. It's some old buildings, but the center is completely new, and it's a lot of buildings from the 50s. And now more and more new buildings come in, and they create this kind of strange combination of architecture. But what is quite nice is that it is a very open atmosphere. People are used to accept newness. They're ready for experiments, and they are not too critical about keeping the existing, because the existing was already wiped out once. So this was in a way refreshing, you could say. The location of the market hall is over here. So this is the old map of Rotterdam, the river, and you could see that it's the center of the old city of Rotterdam was a market, and on this spot our building is standing. And after the war it looked like this. Here you see the train. This is the cathedral still there. There's a couple of old buildings that survived, and the whole thing is new. And this you see, this is the plot. Train is now underground, and there's a market on top of it, an outdoor market. Twice a week, and the new market was supposed to be to give more development into this part of the city, which is an idea from the politicians to say if we put some additional food market here that's open 7 days a week, and we also want more apartments inside. This part of the city will benefit, because it had a lot of offices and it was quite empty at night. So when we were asked to join this competition, it was a competition between developers. We thought it was, in a way, a bit stupid to just make a slab with apartments and a market in between, and this would be then one solution. But hey, when we turn it around, We have still the same slab, but we are certainly a huge inside space, and we can make additional square meters on the top, which could be the penthouses. So this would add an extra value, so to say, for the apartments and an extra value for the market because it has more cubic meters. Turning into an arch, some more studies with lifts and everything, and this shape emerged as a horseshoe. And it was a very simple story, very clear, and everybody said, yeah, great, nice, let's do it. And which is a bit of the attitude of Rotterdam. And so it's like, okay, we all agree, it looks a bit strange, but we're going to make it. So this is, it was also built in a straightforward way. So in a way, it is still a straight slab, except this is slightly curved, and there's a bridge on top spanning between the slabs. So it is, in a certain way, it's also very simple. Except the scale of it is big, and what's also very complicated was the underground part, because Holland is very wet, and the building underground is sort of pushing the water up. So it was a complicated situation to build the underground spaces. So when it was done, the inside became a complete magnet, because this was actually designed together with an artist. Everybody knew that when we would have this space and the little stalls, this internal facade was very, very important. But more about that later. The section of the building is like this. You see this is the ground level. Here's a supermarket, the biggest parking of the city inside it, some shops and bars, and these are the apartments. These are more or less the normal apartments. And on the top floor you have the last lift stop, and you go in here and you have your little patio on top and a large roof deck. So that's one section, and then it's stretched out to the side. What we said in the beginning when we were working on the design, that to make apartments on top of a market, it would be not like a normal apartment. You have normal apartments everywhere. This would be a certain type that is not the standard, but maybe, let's say, a few people in the city that would really like to live there, and they're maybe interested in food. So they would be able to, when they are cooking, they could get the fresh stuff from the market downstairs, and everybody would be very healthy and cook a lot. Unfortunately, we couldn't. This solution was a joke in a way, because the clients gave this cartoon to us because we were always nagging about opening these windows. It turned out to be impossible financially, fire regulations, all kind of smell, and blah blah blah. So the windows are not open, both to the inside, and they're really quiet. It's like an aquarium. So you have this additional room in your house, and you can look down into the busy life of the markets. And on the other side, you have a kind of regular balcony and a view to the city. So they're in a way they're one-sided or one-sided to the apartments, but they're also two-sided, of course. They have an additional quality on the inside. And the funny thing is, as this arch is going like this and the floors are like that, depending on which floor you are, you have a different angle of the wall. So these guys are quite high up. You can see the angle of their wall is almost like this, almost flat. And then they can really look down from when they are standing. In this space, in a way, additional cubic meters, because they bought a certain amount of square meters, but this is in a way a bonus space, the bonus air, and they can look inside. And another one, this lady is a little bit more in the middle part, and you could. But the funny thing is that because the angle is like this, you can really look down into the interior of the market. So we went back after the building was occupied and asked a few people if they would pose for the photographer and to show their apartment. They're very proud because in the Netherlands you buy an apartment which is kind of a standard. It's not completely finished, so to say. You put in your own kitchen and your own flooring and stuff. So every apartment is slightly different. So these guys have a more traditional layout over there. Two bald guys. And this lady is always our favorite market hall lady. She's always welcome to tour her house, stand her house open for visitors. So when we have a client coming and we call her up, hey, we have a client, are you there? No, sure, no problem. As long as they brush their feet on, so to say, on the doormat and don't be afraid of the dog. It's funny. We had Rem Koolhaas also standing there. It was good. Never mind. There's another part. This is the white apartment on top. It has a big balcony and you can look over the city. And there's also a bit more narrow penthouses. where you enter from the last gallery, then you have a staircase, and then you enter on the level of the house. And the top floor, they have this additional space, which this little patio, where you have a glass floor, like this window, and then this window is repeated horizontally, and so you have your outdoor space, glass, the sky above you, and the market below you. And some of them, these guys, they made a really beautiful interior garden. So here they are standing on their glass window, and their rabbits are too afraid to do this. But so they made their own little tropical garden in Rotterdam. So that's what I'm saying. They're just different houses that you do not find elsewhere. There's a couple of them, and this was at the moment when, let's say, conditions for the housing was not so good. And it was also a crisis, so to say, in the Netherlands. But this project attracted enough people that really liked it to move on. So from your house, you have on the edges, you can actually look out through the glass window of the market hall. It's a gigantic glass facade, which is in tension. It's like a big net, basically. And it's very important because if you wouldn't have this net, there would be a huge steel structure. And if you would have that you would not be able, for instance, to see the tower of the church, because then you would have all these steel mullions in front of it, and that would block the view. And at the same time, from the outside inside, we want to have this hall completely open and transparent in a way. So in a way, this is only a wind sheet, a rain cover. The interior of the hall is actually an exterior climate. This is the structural drawing of it. So it is a sort of a tennis racket, where the cables are pulled on the edges, also there in two directions. And this gives a certain flexibility in a way, like when you hit the tennis ball, the middle part can move a bit more than the outside. So the middle part can move when it's a very windy situation. It could move 60 centimeters in, 60 centimeters out. You don't really see that when you're there, but it is so it's a very elegant solution that gives really this feeling of that you can enter. That maximum transparency. At night, the building glows, so to say, especially in the winter time. The lights go on, and then this interior, this kind of fantastic ceiling, in a way inspired by the Italians, of course, gave us this sort of additional quality, where architecture and art come together. This was a competition between artists. After we first proposed to have an LED ceiling with a lot of lights, so that would be like a gigantic TV, a curved screen, the largest screen in the world, so to say, but that was a bit too expensive. But then what to do? So we agreed that it needed something, and we selected with the client and the specialists from the city a certain amount of artists, 5 artists. They had to make a proposal, and this guy won, so to say. Here you see the jury. This is are the developers. They're judging the proposal from the artist. What would it look? And they're sitting inside the sales center, which was a mini version of the market hall, where buyers from the apartments would come and already experience what it would be like to live in an arch. So this was the picture that he's the center. Like you would lie on the grass, you look to the sky. And you could still see some of the beams of the market hall, but he imagined that the building would not be there. You would actually see the church, and food would fall from heaven on top of you. And there's a little cow there, so you are like a little animal lying in the grass looking up. Then there was an issue about this computer-generated image, and it was a bit big. So the computer there was no computer that could open the file. In the end, it was done with the help of Disney and Pixar. This was rendered and printed onto 4,000 panels. Each of them was different. This is, of course, with the new technologies it doesn't really make a difference if you make 1 or 4,000. It's a little bit more expensive per panel, but in the end, it's not that much more expensive. So, but then you're able to make this unique ceiling, which is like a giant puzzle. And the guys putting it on, they had a good time, so to say, no better than any other building. Each day, a piece came out, and it was quite an amazing moment. This was done quite quickly, and now it's really attraction of the city. People come, take pictures, they look up, and it's like, wow, it's interesting that a market becomes such a kind of tourist attraction. together with the grid of the panels and the windows, this is what you see when you look up to the inside of the hall. And but of course it's not only about architecture. In the end, it's about people selling some stuff there. It gives a certain atmosphere where you can have dinner on top of the stalls, and there's a mix of let's say simple and more exclusive stuff, so to say. You have basic, cheaper apples and then super expensive apples, so to say, and everything in between. So this is a typical feel when you're walking around. The idea is that the carpet of the city, the same material from the streets is applied inside on the whole. So it's like you're walking on the outside, except it's covered. And it every tenant of the stalls would basically be able to design their own little atmosphere. So they're all different. So we made a kind of super neutral gray frame, and inside everything that's not gray is from the guys selling stuff. So here the French fries team, and the pinchos guy selling Spanish stuff, cheeses, lots of cheese, and this is in one of the bars next door. So every atmosphere is different. So it's a very mixed bunch of tenants and entrepreneurs entering the market. Downstairs you have a large supermarket and a garage. Every level has a different. You go back in time. So there's a small archaeological exposition, which is then displayed at the edges of the where you move from the parking into the building. And on the outside, we kept it simple, so to say, as this was very colorful. A neutral, in a way, gray building would be okay, because it would actually come almost out of the ground as the existing pavement that the city was using in the pedestrian areas, with kind of gray granite. We thought it would be a good idea to use the same stone and then apply it over the whole building, so that it almost came out of the ground, so to say. A view from the other side, and at night, it makes the city a bit more cozy, so to say, because Rotterdam is not the coziest place, but Market Hall added some, let's say, a certain mood to the city, to the center, that was not there before. And Rotterdam is now quite on the map, because there's quite a few buildings being made, like this one from OMA. Of course, this bridge was already there. So there's a couple of big projects that changed, let's say, the atmosphere. But on the other hand, it was not only this that changed it, because there was another movement that came up from the bottom, from the small scale, which was dealing with the transformation of old apartments, old houses, in, let's say, more difficult parts of town. Rotterdam is a working class city, and there's quite some neighborhoods with a bit of social issues. There was a couple of years ago, they did an experiment by where people could buy a big empty house, which they had to finish themselves for a small price, with the obligations to live there for at least 5 years. So this was kind of attractive for a certain type of people. They were able to buy a house for little money and then transform it to their own personal needs. And at the same time, the collective thing was that they would make, all together they would do the new roofing and the better foundations. This was done by the general contractor. And this type of development, called DIY housing, freely translated by me, is a very successful product. It attracted sort of young entrepreneurs, more creative families. They were able to stay in the cities, and blocks were then transformed, where the existing facade was basically remained the same. Sometimes one family has a whole house, sometimes there are two, one has 2 floors, the other one has 3 floors, and then there's a collective garden on the inside. And this together with a sort of larger scale development had a big impact on the social atmosphere of the city, and the people were, so to say, better, more let's say positive about their outdoor spaces and about the neighborhoods. Another favorite of mine is this park, which is on top of a shopping center. Here's one of these not fantastic neighborhoods, but interesting mix of different nationalities. There's not enough green space, and this was then added as a park on top of this shopping mall, which is then a balcony towards the harbor. So it's really intriguing. You don't see it in the magazines, but it's really nice. Rotterdam as well. Yeah, you can see that this park is over here, yeah, actually here. But there's an enormous area of industrial development. This is the harbor area, which is then slowly developing towards the sea. So this part is a future city, so to say, you could say, which has a lot of potential for the future, but we don't know exactly what to do with it. And it will take some time. But you see then first, in a way, the fact that it's a luxury because you have a lot of space. It can be used for art, it can be used for all kind of initiatives dealing with food. This is a circus school that are then more or less invading these developments, and they're kind of pioneering into this new, as a transformation of these neighborhoods. I'd like to show you, I go from Rotterdam now to some of our projects where similar issues are happening, and the first one I'd like to show is an urban design we are doing in Bordeaux, which is, like I showed before in Rotterdam, is one of these sort of mixed-use industrial wastelands that's on a good location. Bordeaux is has a beautiful historical center, and this right opposite of this center is here's the city. You see this piece of land which used to be mixed use for the army and infrastructure, and you can see that this is right opposite of the historical center and offers great potential. So the city used to be like this. You had the Rive Gauche and the Rive Droite, and this was the good side, and that was the bad side. And the idea that now the city planning office have is to make this into more coherent unity. So the two sides are better developed. And so if you would look at this idea, then this would be the ideals. You have again the same as this one, but then on the other side. And you have a mixed use of activities. There's all kind of mix of housing, using, shop, cultural facilities, so that really have one city. Of course, these days green is an essential issue, same as energy, and the kind of zero energy principle. That these are almost no-brainers, so to say. So these were the starting points for the developments. There might be a new bridge here, and there's already infrastructure around it. So it's really a good place, so to say. Yeah? You don't, instead of expanding the city, in brewing, so to say, going inside, intensifying the existing is the way forward. Some impressions of what it's like. Yeah, the usual elements. You have some ruins, but actually quite intriguing as well. And these spaces you can find probably here in Milan as well. What we took as a starting point was to try to keep as much as possible anything that was there, any pattern of the streets, any trace of the train. We thought, let's keep the character there, because somehow when you have something that is there and the presence of the past is somehow visible, it gives a flavor, a certain mood that you can never do when you make a new neighborhood. So these were the lines and traces that we kept as a kind of base for the design, and then we looked at where can we then build. Then we could say we can build in between these spaces, and you could basically extrude all the plots that we would have. Of course, this was way too much square meters. And then we did a few operations to find out what the maximum envelope could be for the new development. So it was an urban design. So the first one is let's chop for the light. Let's chop on a 45-degree from the streets upwards. So depending the width of the streets, then you can make an angle over the volume, and you slice off the volume, and this is what you would get. So a lot of chopped up roofs you see. Here you see this section. You're walking in the streets. This is the light angle, on the other side the same thing. And on the inside of the block, these are two little houses, and on the inside you can make a big house, so to say. Then the element of the light, of the sun. On certain parts you would like to have sun, and if it's too steep it doesn't really work, so you have not enough sun. That means that these houses would be asymmetrical, the envelope would be asymmetrical, etc., etc. So step by step, we got a certain amount of shapes, of kind of volumetric elements that could turn into new developments and new buildings. And our idea was that this neighborhood was not going to be designed by MVRDV alone, but we would be able to invite all our friends and some more as well. So 100 architects, every plot a different architect. There would be elements like ventilation and solar panels. These were all kind of part of the game. Same for the public spaces and the green. So this was basically the outline for the design, step by step, explained in different scales. So we explained, for instance, here in a practical way, hey, you have this existing atmosphere. What do we like to keep? This we keep, and then we start to extrude the plots, chop it off by the light, chop it off by the sun, add the colors, add pockets of space, add facades and green and solar energy. So this is then the view you could imagine from the other side of the city, across the river, and the new skyline is in a way a projection from the pattern that's there in the existing there, but it's invisible at the moment. If you then project it upwards with the principle that I explained, the facade and the skyline becomes like a kind of, a very specific skyline defined by the patterns of the past in a way. So that was the principle. Everybody liked it, and now we are developing it in the next step. I show you some more timelines in a way. This is some of the old postcards that we found, some of the halls and the stables for the army. Buildings are still there. We add a new envelope, same one for this. So in a way they're all pretty nice buildings, but they needed you can do quite a lot with them, and by just keeping the facade or so it will be a mix of this kind of old and new volumes. At the moment we're working on a first phase together with 3 other architects. We make the first block. This was a second competition right next to our plot, but we used the same principles and designed a series of buildings inside these envelopes. It was in a way a test case for ourselves if our own regulations would work. And this is the main building that we will have designed. It's a series of apartment blocks in all kinds of different typologies, which went on sale last month. And this is the model you see when you want to buy an apartment. This is done by another architect. This is done by us. So to be seen soon. Next one is another French project I'd like to show because it's a building that is so ugly that we were almost we were doubting if we would do this project because it's like, is this really worth it? But in the end, it turned out a good exercise. It didn't really matter how ugly the building is. The more ugly, so to say, the more surprise you could do with it. The more you can do it. This is an old mustard factory in Dijon. The building is very new. It was only 5 years old when it was already abandoned, and so it was structurally okay, but in a way also very depressing, you could say. So there was, however, a guy who wanted to open a call center in this building because it was located on a good position next to the park and the station. On one condition, then he said, okay, I would like to buy this building and develop it only when I can choose the architect. And his son studied architecture, and he said, Dad, you have to go to call MVRDV. Oh, well, okay. So then this guy called us and said, oh, do you want this building? And then that was such a good story that we said, okay, let's do this, even though there was no money and hardly any time, so to say. So it was a quick study, turning this existing factory into a series of workspaces with a different character. One of them was a parking space that we turned into an office space. We took away some floors. Some of them we just painted. Other ones there was already an existing ceiling, an existing carpet, and we just took out some panels. And here we did some painting on the walls. We added some small pavilions, and here in the largest space we made a big stair and a new window on the outside wall with a view to the park. So this is totally simple, but then the money was gone, basically, but we still really feel happy on the outside. This was the building, how it looked. We only had some money left to buy stickers. So with these stickers, we could make a QR code, and the QR code was used for the company, the telecenter, the call center, to make advertisements. So you could basically scan with your phone on the building, then you would go to their website. And it gave them a certain identity, and suddenly the building that was so boring became suddenly cool again, only by using a few stickers on the facade. So another lesson, that it doesn't really matter how much fancy materials you use. You could do this with super simple stuff and a good idea. The most ugly building can become cool. So that was Dijon. These are a few quick examples, and this one. The great part about existing buildings is that it goes very fast. So normally an architectural project like the Markthal took more than 10 years, and this was done in 1.5 years, from idea to finishing. Similar idea and similar quick was a building we did in Korea, in Seoul. This is one of the main shopping streets in the south part of Seoul with a lot of brands. And our client owned a building that was, so to say, on a good location but looked very ugly. And the neighborhood had a certain vibe. At that moment, nobody knew about it, but the name was Gangnam. But when we were working on the project, everybody started to know Gangnam because, I don't need to say anything else. So there it is, Gangnam style. So we had to basically make this ugly duck, turn it into a cool building. The guys didn't want to demolish it because there were already tenants inside with contracts for long leasing periods. There was a kind of strange fashion brand on the ground level, and if you would upgrade the facade, they would be able to build one more story on top. So this would give them extra square meters, and that would pay for the operation. So this building was standing in line with the Prada, the Gucci's, and the Ralph Lauren's, Dolce & Gabbana, and there was this little strange building in the middle with all kind of, you call them, this kind of operation where people do the makeovers. You call them? Okay. Anyway, they get the eyelids raised and these kind of things. Okay, never mind. So a lot of Chinese women go there to beautify themselves in Korea. Plastical surgery. Plastical surgery. So in a way, we thought that the building was being treated like the people inside. They got a makeover. Became out more beautiful than they went in. So we added a new facade with a lot of billboards, so that everybody renting a space could also rent a window, a new window on the outside. So it was, instead of a one-tenant building like the neighbors, it was going to be a multi-tenant building. So this was the idea, existing and new, dress up, and then let's say you go to this plastic surgeon, you come out with a lot of bandages. And then you have to wait a few weeks, and then you're really beautiful. So this was what happened with the building. Inside, you still see the old building shimmering through. We only took out the tiles, added steel frames, and clad it with a new tile. Added a little pavilion on the roof. And in a small detail, we added a light element, a light fixture around every window, which you could turn on at night depending on the mood, blue or this or that, or everybody has a different color. That's the story of Gangnam. One more, going back to Europe, one of the first buildings that we transformed was 2 silos in Denmark, in Copenhagen on the harbor edge. And this was basically the obvious thing to do was to fill floors inside the silo and make little walls in the facade. If you would make big walls, then the whole building would collapse, so you could only make small holes. And this was a pity because the views are really nice on that side of the river. So our proposal was to put these square meters on the outside, and then this is a bit more per floor, so we needed less floors. And then every apartment would have a fantastic panorama window. And everybody understood the principle when we showed the project, except that it was a bit more complicated to build. So the clients realized that when in the end it would be smart for him to develop like this, because then the square meter price of the finished result would be higher when there would be apartments on the outside than on the inside. So he accepted the fact that it was more complicated with the bonus of selling it for a better price. Here you see some images of construction. Big steel beams would cross the existing silo, and on top of them the columns and the floors for the outside of walls were made, and they were tied back on the inside to the foundations. So what was funny was that there was a maximum amount of square meters for this plot. This was all made on the outside. So then the inside was empty because it couldn't be. It was not possible to add square meters there. Turned it into a gigantic lobby, which was a kind of architectural bonus space where you would enter in and you have this fantastic collective space, and then you would go into your apartment. So here it's almost like a space odyssey space where you have everything we added was absorbing material, perforated metal, carpets, to keep, let's say, the original walls visible on the inside. So in the inside you still see the concrete wall, and through the concrete wall you enter your apartment. And from there on, the bonus space is as well a gigantic balcony and a full view to the city. So that was our first Danish project, and after that a lot of Danish interns came to our office, and some of them were really good. And one of them started an office in Denmark, and together we worked on a competition for the Rock Museum in Roskilde, Rock Magneten, which is kind of an old factory, a concrete factory that turned into a cultural center. And Roskilde is, maybe you know this, is a kind of a festival space. Every summer there's one of the biggest rock festivals in Europe. It's taking place in Roskilde. It's already there for like more than 40 years. But the city is so known for that, so everybody thinks Roskilde, oh yeah, I have a Roskilde festival. They thought it would be interesting to have something as well that you can visit throughout the whole year. Not only for 3 weeks in the summer, but then they thought this location of the factory was between the festival terrain and the center of the city, and it would be a perfect hub, so to say, where all kind of activities could take place. New institutions, but also student housing, schools, and then a museum for rock, Danish rock music. And then we thought, okay, when we start a competition like this and make a piece of architecture that's based on that's somehow inspired by rock music, and we thought it would be fantastic to take out, to use the base elements from that everybody knows about rock. You think about leather jackets, metal studs, a kind of a velvet interior of a music box, speakers, etc. And then on the other hand, deal with the fact that you have always a band. And there were supposed to come a certain amount of buildings, and we thought every building, every phase would have an own identity, and then you could start with the lead singer, and the rock museum would then be, so to say, Mick Jagger, and standing in front. So I brought a small Okay, am I back on the speaker again? Okay, so this was the sort of concept movie we did after we won the competition, and I think it was important where we said, okay, we were the only team that was using the existing halls. The other ones were putting the building next to the street, and we had to make a big red carpet to attract the people a bit further out. But when we would use these existing halls, we were able to create a more contrast in the architecture, because you had this sort of cheap concrete halls that needed a sort of simple transformation, and that would save some money to make a kind of more extravagant little jewel on top of it that would really express, let's say, the architectural with an architecture that would express the function of the building, namely rock music. And it could be a giant cantilever. At once, when the festival would be there, it would be a stage for concerts in the summer. And when it's empty, then you just walk in, you have a gigantic canopy, and you can stand under it when it rains, basically. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes it's really full, sometimes it's empty. So it was a straightforward solution, a 50% cantilever. So this is the new building that we entered, and we with a big truss, this was connected to a concrete base. The studs were translated into a series of aluminium panels. So there were some windows where we added perforated elements that you can see from the inside out, but not from the outside in, and would still have the kind of overall cladding of that building. The red carpet was made, and there's the informality, so to say, that is quite interesting in this front space. Yeah, it is kept. There will be containers, there will be some stuff added, and things are coming and things are going. There will be, in the summer, there are all kind of lamps hanging and there's art installations depending on the situation. So that's the base. For the rest, these halls we kept almost as is, and we only changed them on the inside. And this is what you see when you walk out at night, when the lights go on. And this are kind of effects that you don't know from the beginning, that the red carpet is reflecting in the ceiling of the golden thing. Yeah, that's like, hey, wow. You only realize it when it's there. At night, and in the inside is then this red velvet feeling, where we wanted to make this instrumental box that you enter this velvet space, so to say, completely red. This was the interior design we made, and there was an issue, of course, with the fire, that we wanted to have this as a soft material. But in the end, we found a kind of a special coating that made this look soft, but it's actually still an aluminium panel. Same for the existing hall, where we made the bar with a gigantic concrete counter. So this is a combination of the old and the new. The old space is treated very simple, and the new space is more extravagant. Here you see that red interior, and there are special coat hangers over there. This is a link to the industrial past of this site, because there were a lot of these construction workers working there. They would hang out their clothes and you would hoist them up. So that's there. And upstairs in this exposition space, it's basically a black box with a small venue. You have a small tribune where concerts can be held, but the exhibition was done by somebody else. So here, the patio behind. And our storyline that we made in the beginning was that you basically come in, maybe from the station of Roskilde, a limousine would bring you to the space. You walk over the red carpet, you stand in line for autographs, and it's basically the life and death of the rock star. The rise to fame. You go up in the elevator, and you see what's going on in the career of this rock star, and in the end you have to walk down, like everybody in the end is becoming less popular, and then you go out and look back to the world. But this was the opening weekend, and the exhibition is a really interactive thing. So it's fun for different generations. So it spans from the 50s to now, and it also explains the history of youth culture. So it's a family outing, so to say. Of course, in Denmark, this is all done in a way that it's perfectly organized, and everything works, and there's a lot of money for the exhibition itself, so that it really becomes a total experience. Some images from Instagram, so you can spin around on a record. You can mix your own music. You can listen to all kind of Danish classics. My knowledge of Danish rock music wasn't so big, but there is some interesting Danish music, I can tell you. And here the space inside can be used for concert as well. At the moment, we are working on a second phase, which is the building next door, which is going to be a school, kind of high school, not exactly high school, but between high school and university. People can spend the summer or winter in Roskilde, developing their talents, like dealing with creatives or thinking or making stuff. So it's more for kids of like 17, 18, between university and high school. So this is the principle of the project. The magnet is added, the school comes by, and at the moment we also designed a couple of student blocks, student housing, that for the students that will be here in the school, they will live in this housing next door. So these will be built at the same time. And actually, quickly an update of this school. It's really an interior project, basically. This is the existing hall and the program inside. So it's a series of boxes, so to say, inside a higher space. That's the building. Again, a very ugly building, but by really simply adding, in this case, a small lecture space, and brushing off, let's say, the basic qualities of this hall, we think it can be a really beautiful building. Here you see the space inside, which is because these columns and these beams were made in the same factory. So this hall was basically produced in the factory next door. So this will still be there, so this will be still concrete, and we take away a few elements in the ceiling, added some boxes, and this is the story basically. Some of these boxes are for working with the hands, other ones are working with working with the mind, and working with the body. Basically, this is the concept of the school. So there's the activities like dancing, there's activities like music, creative arts, things like debate, philosophy, and leadership are all taking place there. And then we set up a system of how to define the ideal solution for the interiors. We didn't have that much money, so we have developed a kind of a data sheet for potential qualities of atmosphere of certain materials. So depending, we indicated a certain score on atmosphere, how it would be if it's permanent or if you could play with it, it can be graffiti or a poster wall. What's the cost? What are the acoustical qualities, etc., etc. And this all was done in a mix with a kind of dialogue, because it's very much a dialogue with the client in countries like Denmark. This kind of user discussions are a really important part of the design phase. So in an interactive design score, we reached an agreement that this was the ideal solution, and hopefully it will be like this. Next year we'll start construction. And, but in a way it looks a bit, there are certain elements that, for instance, that we use in our own office as well. So it's not that different from let's say, the space that we like to work in. It's an existing hall, and then you add a mix of color and material and a certain atmosphere. That's a good base for all kind of activities. Some images there. And one more for the road, so to say. We moved to Asia, and this is quite an unknown project, or quite a new one, also a transformation. And so sometimes it's really nice to do this kind of modest projects, simple in a way. Buildings that are not so, let's say, fantastically dynamic or so, but this is quite a cool, typical Hong Kong warehouse bought by an investor, and they want to make an office building out of it. And we thought it was actually, as is, already quite beautiful, because you have this simple structure, and then you have this almost industrial feel to it. Of course, it's not handy as an office building, so we said, okay, let's just kick out everything that is not structural, that you have some sort of a frame, a kind of grid of floors and beams left, and that's then the base for the new building. And then we only add glass windows, and also in the inside, that you really see the existing and the new as a contrast to each other. So you can, everything is concrete is existing, everything is glass is new, clear. So there you have the result, and we added as well for every floor an outdoor space. So this is kind of a lofty office space, and then you have always on every floor the potential to step out and look over the city at night. And you see that these outdoor spaces give an extra quality. And we made it one kind of showroom floor to test the effect of a completely glass office. And so this is a tenant option. So if you rent some floors in this building, you can choose if you like it like this. You could actually get it like this, with glass floors and glass facades, everything glass. And this is the difference. And in a way, this is one of our topics that we, as a kind of fascination in the office. It's not only color, we also like to deal with development of new materials, and especially glass. So we have a couple of buildings made where this every time a new invention was made, in a way. This one was built in the south of Holland, in a village called Schijndel, actually the village where Winnie grew up. And it's in a way it's a typical for that part of Holland. You have a church, you have a little square, there's a main street, and there's a lot of farms close by. It's a village atmosphere that turned into a more commercial development, so to say. The more people started to live there, but in a way it's not really beautiful, but in the essence it's very recognizable as well. So in the center of town there was an empty spot, was caused by war damage. So this is the main street. After the war, some buildings were lost, and they never really could decide what to do with it. And then there was a parking, and of course it's very handy as a parking. So for that it was okay for a while. But after a moment, people started to discuss, okay, what can we do? And it was a long discussion, very many different opinions. And after several earlier attempts, an urbanist was hired, and he was very successful into making a solution, and the solution was that this was the building envelope that was going to be the base for a new building. And then we got back into the picture again because we were involved for this project for a while, but it was never really developing further. At a certain moment it was clear that, guys, we have a solution, this is going to be it. This is the outline of the building, if you can make something inside this volume. And then looking at this volume, it was almost too obvious to say, hey guys, if this is what you decided on, what you would really like is this. Yeah? So it has the shape of a typical farm from the village. So if that is the average conclusion was, let's make a farm. So we said, let's do it then. Let's make a farm together. So the thing is then, which farm? And then it was a nice research project together with the architectural history department of the Eindhoven school. A kind of inventory was made of all the farms of the village, and they were indeed pretty much the same, but slightly different as well. So a database was made to map all of them, to how long are they, where are the doors, how many chimneys, what are the proportions, on which side is the entrance, etc., etc. So all this information you can put in, and we try to find them, to develop the average out of it, and to make one farm that is kind of the average of all the farms in the city. At the same time, we knew that this was not enough. We asked a photographer to help us to capture certain details of the farms. It can be a simple door, a little window with plants, etc., etc. So this was a kind of collection of like details and elements, specific elements that are specific for these farms. The only issue then, when we put them into our computer, you could say, well, the average farm has so many windows on this facade, so many windows on that facade, it is so and so long, and so out of this information, this was then the average farm. There was obviously, so you could see that there was one crucial problem. The average farm was much smaller than the building envelope. So what to do? Luckily it was a digital file, so we can introduce scale. So we stretched the farm to the right proportion, 1.65 times bigger. And then it became certainly a fantastic solution to say, look, we don't have to make this really out of brick. We can actually make it like a Photoshop building. So there was a new technology where you can print on the glass, and then this more or less happened at the same time when we were working on this building. And after some research, it became actually possible that we could use this product. And then the architecture of the building, became really a digital project, where we could erase some of the facades where we want to have a view, because the building was scaled 1.65. The people are not scaled 1.65, so when you would stand in front of the window would be much too high. So the client, who was a commercial developer, we want to have some shops and little bars. Said, look, I need a shop window, so please make a window. So then we just erased some of the pattern and gave him a shop window. But then we kept everything else. So this is then the recipe. The building is basically not existing, so we had a pattern from the brick from the farms. The artist and the photographer added the windows that he took from the best windows. He added some sort of mystery layer of kind of reflection and shadows and little details that you only see when you are standing in front of it. Then the client with the commercial, let's say, demands wanted entrances, views, shop windows at a certain position. So we erased everything, put it all together, and then you have the facade. So the facade that we handed into the construction permit will look like this. It was basically a very simple steel structure with glass, regular glass panels, but every panel was printed in a different way. And you could see then the real transparent elements, these were white. Went to the factory, it was built, and it looks like this. So you sit in the canteen there in the cafe, and then they have it has really a kind of a bizarre, strange combination. It's kind of little hallucinatory, surreal elements that we didn't expect from the beginning, but it turned out really, really nice. Like this, but it's a totally normal village town in the south of Holland. It's not a city at all. It's like 15,000 inhabitants. They're very conservative people. Modern architecture is not allowed. But this was possible, and everybody was getting really excited when the ice saloon opened. And I think it's Italian ice cream, but I'm not sure. But you go in and you're suddenly in the kind of inverse of the farm. So it's like a church window. This part is still a bit Catholic, part of Holland. So the link to the church was easily made. And now when you have your coffee there, you're suddenly in this beautiful barn. Everybody feels at home, so to say. And that was quite an interesting phenomenon, because you see that we didn't know who would rent these spaces. But the mixture of the architecture and the interior design is in a way perfect. And the building is standing on this market square with a church, and it blends in almost naturally. And it was, of course, a big debate in the official architecture magazines, because there's a different discussion in the Netherlands that you might not know about, but it's about traditionalism versus modernism. There's a couple of architects that are really into brick, and every building should be detailed in a really beautiful way, forever, perfect qualities. Of course, it's very important, but it's not the only thing. And these guys were so offended by it that they didn't put it in the National Architecture Yearbook, because it was like a building that's where the details, it's architecture is 0.2 millimeters thick. That's what they say. This is not architecture, it's graphic design. Saying, nah, it's perfect, it's architecture. No, but so there was it caused a lot of debate, and I think it's funny to see how that's. But nevertheless, this guy is living probably not far from the building. He came back at night and took a picture of it. He doesn't look like an architecture student, I think. But never mind. So it had a certain quality that was appealing to, let's say, the everyday guy, which we think it's nice. Similar topic, and this is one of the projects that you might know about as a Chanel store, but it's called Crystal Houses, where we took a transformation of an existing shop into a new shop. That's important to know a little bit more about history. This is a street in Amsterdam. It's kind of quite a nice street. Tram passed by. It used to be a residential street, and step by step more shops appeared. And then a shop facade was added to the ground level residences turned into a shop. Later on, the normal shops disappeared and the fashion shops came in. So this was this Gangnam Street in Seoul. This is the main fashion street in Amsterdam. It's you see Amsterdam is like this. It's a very small scale city. All these shops came in. And this gave the owner so much revenues, that the houses on top were many years empty. They took out the door and the stair going to the first floor to have additional shopping space for rent. And now the city is trying to transform this more into a more lively street, so that means these houses will be more occupied again. And this is one part of an operation. So the idea was that two of these existing blocks would be transformed into a new combination of apartments and shopping. And in simply said, the client wanted to combine some of the atmosphere that was there. It was basically the city wanted this as well. The old Amsterdam atmosphere combined with the kind of international brand style. This part is also quite an area where a lot of people come to buy diamonds. And it's Amsterdam. So we thought this could be an interesting kind of link between the two. So this is the original design of the house that was there when it was built. Then the fashion shops came and they chopped off the ground level, and this was more or less empty. The building had there was a potential to add some extra square meters, as long as you kept some sort of a traditional outline. A permit was allowed. This is then the existing house, and what we said, okay, why don't you just, instead of designing it new, you just take the old design and then you stretch it out again, make it fit to the new building envelope. So we took the old drawings from the archive from the city. This is the original design from 1874, and two of these houses then were bought by our client. They were supposed to be demolished, and as with the new shops. This is the design that was approved by another architect before we entered the scheme, and this guy, our client, bought the project, and he said, but he didn't like the design. He said, hey, can't you just help me a bit, because it should look better than this. So then we said, okay, why don't we do it like this? Yeah, simple keep the old design, copy it, and then you have something like that. But where's the shop? I said, no, yeah, it's like this. You have to make it out of glass. If you have your traditional design, you keep that design, but you make it completely transparent. You have a fantastic shop, and at night it will be the bomb. It will be the best building out of the street. He said, yeah, it's a great idea, I love it, but how does it work? And then this is what we showed him as a computer rendering. It's like this kind of ice palace built like this. Suddenly there's this dream house in the streets of Amsterdam. Okay, there was a bit of a discussion about it, because how is that technically working and how is it aesthetically working? The city said, okay, traditional is like this, and a completely glass building won't fly, so to say. We have apartments over there. Energy-wise, it's going to be a nightmare. This is not going to work. So we had to make a new deal out of it. So this is basically the direction, the opposite, the compromise. In Dutch, we like to compromise a lot. You have to deal with a lot of parties, and you have to make a best solution by pleasing everybody a little bit. So this was a possible solution, but we didn't really like it. So you said maybe it could be like this or like that, you know, like that, maybe. So in the end, we sort of came to the conclusion where you have this glass plinth of the shop. These are the apartments, and then we have kind of a fade out. From glass fades over into brick. So this was the solution that was agreed by everybody and was approved. And the only thing was now, how are we going to make the glass? And we had some ideas about it. It looked fantastic on the computer, but then it was about how can you make that real? So we didn't. That was the thing. Maybe we were ignorant because we didn't really know if it would work. But we just said, okay, if it doesn't work, we could do it like this, like plexiglass, and this was the first test. And then we could make the rest also out of glass and make the windows out of plexiglass. And then we discovered this Italian brick, this piece of glass from Murano, and which was insanely beautiful. And when we had ordered a few of them. The effect was so amazing. They said, oh, this we have to test if this works. So can't we make the whole building use glass bricks from Italy? The guys from Murano said, well, yeah, we cannot only make bricks, we can also help you with the other parts. So the glass window frames out of plexiglass, we can also make them out of glass, no problem. So step by step, everybody got more and more excited. There was, of course, an issue of money, but when it's very beautiful, it helps, so to say. So our client got more and more excited. His business partner more and more worried. But in the end, the ultimate solution was like, okay, this is not architecture anymore; it's art. And then everybody said, yeah, it's actually not so expensive anymore. So it's a good advice if you over budget, say it's art. Now, in the meantime, in Italy, they did a fantastic job. Basically, every piece of the building was made into glass. There were different sizes of bricks. There were different decorative elements. The only main issue was how does it stick together? Because you can put them on top of each other, but then it starts to slide. The glass element in itself is very strong, but if you put them together, the weak spot is obviously in the glue. So together with in the university in Delft, research was done on how can you, there's all kind of fantastic glues already made, and you have to think about the dentist, for instance, and you go to the dentist, you get this kind of blue light sometimes, and then within 2 seconds it's done, it's dried and it's really strong. So this same two components with UV lights, they're all kind of new materials that are extremely super strengths. So together with the Department of Materials in the university, we made a test of the bricks, glued them together, and like magic, it would hold. This is quite heavy, and the glue kept everything together. A more complicated element, like the architrave over the windows, was all built in pieces in Italy, came over with a truck, and then it puzzled together in Amsterdam. And we first did a test in the university again, how strong this would be, because on top of this there would be this heavy amount of glass bricks. And let's see if this would, oh, sorry. Oh yeah, okay, click. So this is a kind of structural movie. made by the people in Delft. They were testing the strength of one of the architraves. The complication was as well that it had to be built horizontally, so every brick had to be glued horizontally. So they made a device that would rotate, and every time they would then use the UV lights, glue, switch it again, glue. You can see that every time the glue was applied, it had to be horizontal. So everything was then stuck together. Then the testing had to be done. That's hardcore, this, it's a middle. Yeah, you know the sums, you have to do calculations, you have the loads. You cannot calculate it in the computer, so you have to do it on real. Hoist it up. And then put it onto points, and then put the pressure on. Measure how much strength it could hold before it would break. Well, the good result that it was more than enough to support the layers of glass on top of it. Of course, this was a crucial element for getting the building permit, because it's nice to make this ID, and then there was actually a lot more work in the technical development. Because the drawing itself was already there, they just extruded it, we just changed the color, and then these kind of elements, they would support this part, plus there was actually a steel element in between, so the brick was supported by a steel beam hidden in here, but all this part had to be supported over there and over there. So in the meantime, the building was gone. That was not so much of a problem. They started to build the housing on top. And in the meantime, the glass bit, we didn't have it took a bit longer, so to say. So this was empty for a while, and then the glass came, and the guys from the material department said, yes, you can build here, but you have to seal it off, so there should not become any dust in the glass, between the glue, of course, because that would not be good for the strength of the building. Our client liked it actually a lot, because then he could actually seal off the whole construction site. Nobody could see anything what was happening. So this was there, and we had special permits, cost some parking spots, whatever. So for a long time, this big block was standing in the most expensive shopping street in Holland. And inside, magic was done. There were kind of construction workers, there were PhD students who were studying on this, doing their PhD on this project. And they got the training on the construction site how to glue the bricks in such a way that it was done in a strong enough. So, in a way, it was not a construction site anymore. It was almost like a laboratory condition. Normally, you have a kind of rough concrete, brick, mortar, and kind of loud music. And this construction site was a bit different. And to give you a bit of a feel on what it was like, we made a small movie to honor the guys making this building. That's a bit of a Zen moment, Take it. So basically one guy was doing about 1 square meter per day. And every brick, to give you an impression, is around €50. So it is, you can do the math. You see there he's working with a blow dryer. Okay, but then anyway, to give you a feeling that it went super slow, but super beautiful as well. So here you see then behind the screen, everybody was getting totally exciting, and the difficult part was of course the transition between the brick and the glass and the brick. So actually these are thin strips of brick glued on the glass. So the glass is actually behind the brick, and here it's pure brick. You see a small difference, but this is another issue that had to be solved from the inside and from below, and then it went out, and there it was. Chanel was actually, it's in there for temporary. The owner of this building is also owning a new building where Chanel will be located in the future. And in the meantime, they're here, but everybody thinks that it's built for Chanel, but it's actually not. It's a pity because they didn't want to invest in an escalator. So the first floor, which is also completely transparent, is boxed off by a big alcove here, which is a bit of a pity, and then they put these flowers on. So it will be even more beautiful when Chanel moves out, probably. And but anyway, the building is there, and it's causing quite a stir in the city because it's looking quite normal in one hand, and like a normal fashion shop. But when people pass by, they really realize it's not exactly what they think it is. So this is what it's looking like, and yeah, when you come there, you always see people touching it. So it has a kind of ice. It looks like ice. Yeah. Okay, one more, and that's the last one, and probably you have heard about it as well, because it's first round project for San Pellegrino, and we have been working on this during the summer, and with 4 teams, and this is already shown on the website of San Pellegrino, and now we're together with BIC. We have to compete for the final ticket, so to say, and it's the transformation of the factory and an extension of the factory of the San Pellegrino factory is, itself, which is here located, and you see that in the village where it is in the mountains, it is really an enormous element. Of course, I never realized really, but it's quite normal, that all the water from San Pellegrino comes actually from here. It's not like a Coca-Cola thing where you can have different factories over in different continents. Everything comes from here. So the factory is in a way the ultimate machine where all the water is being gathered. It looks a bit run down, and that's why this project was started. A connection to over the river, to an extension of the factory, and it has this kind of industrial quality, which we thought it was actually quite beautiful in the landscape over there in the north. And so instead of this making something really radically new, it was for us more interesting to make a small part new and to really which is then the visitor center, experience center, which was supposed to be connected to the factory, and minimize, let's say the additional square meters that were needed. So in that respect, so we said, okay, let's keep the factory and make it even more beautiful again in its old state, and by taking away all the shitty stuff, changing the facade again, a bit like we did for the Hong Kong building. The casco of this project is really beautiful, and it can actually hold some additional square meters. So on top of the existing factory, in the same style, in the same grid, we add the required addition, which is almost very modest in that respect, the factory halls there. And then we clean up the existing basically by adding a bit more glass for a better view. You improve, of course, the energy elements and the climate conditions in the building so that there's a nicer work atmosphere. And you keep the old structure alive by giving it in a way a better view. And from the inside, with additional glass, the landscape it becomes super strong. And then that would be already simply enough. So the factory, which is the machine where all the water comes from, is the most important in our idea. And this you should maybe make it again as beautiful as possible. and you can add some green roof and additional. So this can be a super utilitarian building, and as a kind of a bonus and a way to sort of improve the quality, we put the star on the factory, and which is the experience center, the visitor center, in the shape of the star, which is on every bottle of the San Pellegrino brand. So then, in a way, you can say that the factory becomes the bottle. The factory is where the water comes from. The star is the brand, and the additional experience center is then in the shape of the star. So that was the simple story, and I think they liked the simplicity of it. And now we're developing it into a more real project that we have to hand in a few weeks. So keep your eyes open, and we hope to know more. Here's some images from the first round of the competition. Thank you very much. Yeah.